My name is Layla. I was born in a quaint suburban town to my wonderful parents, Logan and Madison. My father worked in a news channel, and my mother used to clean in the hospital. Although we weren't wealthy, our home was filled with contentment and love. Life ticked along normally until I turned 14. That's when the axis of my world shifted dramatically. It was a rainy Tuesday evening. My parents had been out at a dinner party while I stayed home with my grandmother, engrossed in a cartoon, when the shrill ring of the phone pierced the air. I can still recall the shiver that coursed through me as I listened to my grandmother's subdued sobs from the kitchen. The following days passed in a haze of confusion and sorrow. My mother had died instantly in the car accident, and though my father survived, he was grievously injured, his legs permanently impaired. At the hospital, as he lay frail and broken, my father reached out and whispered apologies, his voice cracking with emotion. As a child, I couldn't comprehend his guilt. It wasn't his fault. A reckless drunk driver was to blame. But as I grew older, I understood that his apologies were for the hardships we would now face and the seismic shift in our lives. Yet the spirit of Logan was resilient. Once home and adapting to life in a wheelchair, he immersed himself in his work as a search marketing specialist for the city's major newspaper, his prowess in writing undiminished by his physical limitations. As a teenager, I found solace and strength in our deep bond. We shared a love for classic films, debated over literature, and he supported me academically. When it was time for college, my father encouraged me to embrace new experiences at State University, where I studied forensic accountant. It was there I met Lucy, who quickly became my best friend, and through her, I was introduced to her second cousin, Aiden. Aiden was compassionate and shared a quick wit that matched my own. He accepted my family situation without hesitation, and on meeting my father, they formed an instant connection over their mutual love of classic rock. Aiden's approval of how I managed my life and responsibilities filled me with a quiet pride. College passed by in a blur, and soon after, life began to settle. I secured a job at a tax manager, and Aiden took to commercial driver. Our relationship flourished, and 4 years later, he proposed in the very park where we had our first date, under the crisp canopy of autumn leaves. Elated, I accepted with one important condition, that I couldn't leave my father, who still needed my care. Aiden's response was a broad, reassuring smile that sealed our future with promise and understanding. In sharing this story, it's clear that life's unpredictability can tear at the fabric of our existence, yet it can also stitch it back together in unexpected, beautiful ways. I wouldn't change our current arrangement for anything. We're all living together quite comfortably. Your father's apartment is spacious enough for the 5 of us, isn't it? Our wedding was intimate and lovely. Despite being in a wheelchair, Dad was determined to roll down the aisle to give me away. There wasn't a dry eye in the room as I held Aiden's hand, feeling like I was in a fairy tale. However, every fairy tale has its challenges, and mine came in the form of my mother-in-law, Natalie, and sister-in-law, Ruby. From the outset, it was clear they disapproved of me. "So, your father is handicapped?" Natalie had asked during our first meeting, her expression souring as though she had smelled something foul. "He's disabled," I corrected her, trying to maintain a calm demeanor. "But he works as a search marketing specialist," I added. "How nice," she said dismissively, clearly losing interest. "Aiden, darling, are you sure about this? There are plenty of nice girls from reputable families." I felt a rush of indignation, but Aiden, bless him, immediately defended me. "Mom, Layla comes from a fine family too. Her dad's disability doesn't change that. I love her, and that's all that matters." That quieted Natalie for the moment, but I could see the disapproval still lingering in her eyes. Ruby, following her mother's lead, was just as distant. After the wedding, Aiden moved in with Dad and me. We settled into a comfortable routine. I would head to my job at the tax office, and Aiden would be on the road for days. When he was home, the 3 of us enjoyed meals together. However, whenever Natalie and Ruby visited, the vibe in our home shifted. They would parade around as though they owned the place, barely acknowledging my father. Once, I overheard Natalie whisper to Ruby, "It's such a pity Aiden ended up with her. and her crippled father. What if they have kids? Can you imagine the genes? I was livid, but remained silent for Aiden's sake. I strived to keep the peace, but it was becoming increasingly difficult. One evening, after Natalie and Ruby had left following a particularly tense visit, I found myself unable to hold back my tears. Aiden came and found me crying in our bedroom. Hey, he comforted me, drawing me close. What's wrong? I managed to say through sobs. Your mom and sister, they despise me. They think I'm not worthy of you because of Dad. Aiden's expression hardened. That's absurd. You and Dad are my family now. If they can't accept that, it's their problem, not ours. His words were reassuring, but I still felt uneasy about the ongoing tensions with Natalie and Ruby. As time went on, Aiden's trucking business thrived, and he was frequently on the road. I missed him dearly during his absences, but I kept busy with work and spending evenings with Dad. One crisp autumn night, as I was helping Dad into bed, Aiden called, his voice buzzing with excitement. Layla, I've been thinking, he began. How would you feel about us buying a townhouse? It would be more accessible for Dad in his wheelchair. He could spend more time outdoors, and you could even have a garden to tend to. While traveling on the road, the more my friends spoke about the idea, the more intrigued I became. I glanced at my dad, who was pretending not to overhear us. What do you think, Dad? I asked, switching the phone to speaker mode. Dad's eyes sparkled with excitement. A garden sounds wonderful, he confessed, and it'd make getting outside so much easier. That was the deciding moment. Over the next several weeks, we dedicated ourselves to finding a new home. Eventually, we discovered the ideal place, a spacious townhouse with wide doorways, a wheelchair-accessible shower for Dad, and a lovely backyard. Although taking out a mortgage was daunting, with the combined incomes of my partner, Aiden, and myself, plus the rent from Dad's previous apartment, we managed to afford it. We moved in on a sunny Saturday in spring, and I'll always remember the joy on Dad's face as he wheeled out onto our new patio. This is perfect, sweetie, he beamed, his eyes gleaming with gratitude. Over the following months, we settled in comfortably. I started a small vegetable garden, and Dad spent hours outside, enjoying the sunshine and fresh air. It was blissful. Then came the housewarming party, where we invited friends, colleagues, and yes, Natalie and Ruby. They arrived late, as usual, surveying everything with barely hidden envy. As we toured the house, I noticed Natalie's calculating glances. When we reached the master bedroom, she leaned in with a sly grin. You know, Layla, she whispered, this room would be perfect for Aiden and me. Why don't you send your father to a nursing home? Then I could move in here? I was stunned. Excuse me? I managed to say, but Natalie wasn't done. Your father isn't well, he's not fully himself anymore. He doesn't need all this luxury, a nursing home would suffice for him. Before I could respond, Natalie strode out to the patio where Dad was chatting with guests. To my horror, she grabbed his wheelchair and began pushing him towards the driveway. Natalie, I yelled, chasing after her. What are you doing? If you want him outdoors, he can stay right here. I was furious and shaken. Thankfully, Aiden heard the commotion and came running, his face flushed with anger. Mom, he shouted. What the hell are you doing? Let go of Logan's chair, now. Natalie looked taken aback by Aiden's stern tone. But honey, I don't want to hear it. Aiden cut her off. You and Ruby need to leave now. After they left, Aiden apologized deeply to Dad and me. I'm so sorry, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I had no idea she'd go this far. I'm just so sorry. Dad reached out, patting Aiden's hand. It's not your fault, son. Some people just can't grasp what's important. Life gradually found a new rhythm after the housewarming debacle. Natalie and Ruby kept their distance, which was fine by me. Aiden dedicated himself more to his work, taking on longer hauls to help us manage our new mortgage commitments. It was a challenging time, but ultimately, it brought us closer together as a family, fortified by the bonds of understanding and resilience. Balancing my role at the tax office with caring for our home and my father for years sped by seamlessly. Our family found comfort in routine. Though Aiden was frequently away due to his job, his presence at home always brought joy. My father's health was stable, and he enjoyed his days gardening or editing from his workspace at home. Then, one fateful day at work, my phone rang with news that would forever alter my life. On the other end, a voice introduced himself as Officer Rodriguez from the Highway Patrol. A chill ran through me as he delivered the heart-wrenching news of Aiden's severe accident. The details of the head-on collision were a blur, the gravity of the words failing to take hold until after the call ended. That was when the harsh reality hit me. Aiden was no longer with us. The following week was a blur of grief and arrangements, all carried out in a numb state. I knew it was important to personally inform Natalie, Aiden's mother, about the tragedy. When I called, her initial sharp response turned to accusations. Blaming me for the accident, she claimed it was my fault for Aiden's rigorous work schedule. Her harsh words left me reeling, but she ended the call abruptly, leaving me in tears. Aiden's funeral reflected the somber weather, with a gray, drizzly day. Despite the absence of his mother and sister, the community's turnout showed the respect and love they had for him. My father's supportive presence reassured me as we faced this tough time together. When we returned home, something felt amiss. The lights were on, and there was movement inside, highly unusual as I had made sure everything was off before we left. Concerned we might be being burgled on such a day, I cautiously approached with my father. To my surprise, the voices inside were familiar, a twist I had not anticipated on such an already emotional day. As I entered our living room, I was met with a chaotic scene, Natalie and Ruby surrounded by boxes and random furniture. What on earth is happening here? I asked, my confusion temporarily overpowering my sorrow. Natalie looked at me, her expression one of feigned compassion. "Oh, Layla, dear, we're just helping you pack. After all, it's not like you can afford to stay here now that Aiden's gone," she said. I was dumbstruck. Ruby added in her overly sweet tone, "Don't worry, you can move back into your dad's apartment. It's quite cozy." Anger surged within me. "Get out," I demanded quietly, yet with a threatening calm. "Get out of my house right now." To my shock, Natalie seemed taken aback. "This house is ours now, along with all of Aiden's property. We're his family after all." "Funny," I snapped back, "you didn't seem like family today at his funeral." "Oh wait, you weren't there." Natalie dismissed me with a wave of her hand. "We were busy with other arrangements. Now be a good girl and start packing. We need this cleared out by tomorrow." I was flabbergasted by their audacity. They hadn't mourned Aiden, hadn't attended his funeral, and now they wanted to evict me from my home. "I'm calling the police," I declared, reaching for my phone. Natalie and Ruby looked at each other, clearly not anticipating my resistance. "Layla," Natalie started to say, but I cut her off. "You have 5 minutes to leave before I call the cops. This is my home. Aiden and I bought it together, and you have no right to be here." Perhaps it was the determination in my tone or the defiance in my gaze, but they finally realized they had crossed a line. They collected their belongings and left, but Natalie couldn't resist one last jab. "This isn't over, Layla. Expect a call from our lawyers." The days that followed were filled with grief, anxiety, and endless paperwork as I tried to sort through Aiden's affairs, wary of Natalie and Ruby's next move. Then, about a week later, I got a call from a local law firm. My heart raced as I picked up, fearing Natalie's threats were coming to fruition. "Mrs. Aiden," a professional voice inquired. "This is Anthony from Anthony and Partners. I'm calling about your late husband's will." "A will?" Aiden hadn't mentioned a will. "Yes, he came to us 4 months ago," Mr. Anthony continued. "He was quite clear about his intentions." The following morning, I sat across from Mr. Anthony in his office, anxious about what I would learn. He offered his condolences before opening Aiden's file. "As I mentioned, your husband drafted a will," he said and began to read. "I, Aiden, being of sound mind, hereby bequeath all my worldly possessions to my beloved wife, Layla." I gasped, tears filling my eyes as he continued. "This includes our home, my truck, and all our savings. It is my wish that Layla use these resources to care for herself and her father, Logan, whom I have come to love as my own. Even from beyond the grave, Aiden was protecting us. Mr. Anthony handed me a letter from Aiden. Trembling, I opened it. My dearest Layla, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone. I'm so sorry for leaving you and Logan. Please know, you two are the best thing that ever happened to me. Reading his words, I felt a mix of sorrow and gratitude. Aiden had made sure we were safe, his love reaching out to guide us even now. I drafted this will because I knew the nature of my mother and sister, and I didn't want to cause you any worry, Layla. I had to ensure that you and Logan were safeguarded in case something unforeseen happened to me. You and Logan are my true family, not them. Take good care of each other, live fully, and remember I will always be looking out for you. With all my love, Aiden. Holding the letter tightly, tears streamed down my face, and my father, his hand comforting me, was also crying. Mr. Anthony, our lawyer, allowed us a moment to compose ourselves before continuing. He informed us that, given the accident, the insurance was set to pay out the full value of my husband's policy. What does that mean? I asked through my tears. Mr. Anthony replied with a gentle smile. It means you'll receive enough money to clear your mortgage and more. Leaving his office, I felt a huge relief lift off my shoulders. Aiden had indeed taken care of everything. As we arrived home, I noticed a familiar car nearby. My heart dropped. It was Natalie's sleek sedan. Oh no, I muttered under my breath. Natalie and Ruby were on our porch, but this time I felt strong. With Aiden's letter in my pocket and his love in my heart, I confronted them. Layla, Natalie started, her voice overly sweet. We need to talk about Aiden's estate. I stood firm. No, Natalie, we really don't. Aiden left everything to me. It's all legal. And you know why? Because we were his family, not you. Now, please leave. You're trespassing. Natalie was momentarily speechless, and Ruby, looking uneasy, quickly pulled her away. In the weeks that followed, as I managed Aiden's affairs, the insurance money arrived as promised, enough to pay off our mortgage and then some. One afternoon, I discovered a journal in Aiden's desk, filled with his handwritten plans and dreams, including starting a college fund for the children we hoped to have. Reading his words, I felt a renewed sense of loss for the future we'd planned together. That night, I struggled to sleep, haunted by thoughts of what could have been. When I did drift off, I dreamt of Aiden smiling, reassuring me that everything would be okay. I awoke feeling strangely different. As the days passed, morning sickness set in, signaling the start of a new chapter. At first, I attributed my constant unease and distraction to stress and the deep sorrow I was experiencing, but a nagging thought at the back of my mind suggested there might be another reason. After a week of inner turmoil, I found myself in the pharmacy, my hands shaking as I picked up a pregnancy test. The 5 minutes I waited for the result felt like an eternity. When I finally mustered the courage to look, the 2 distinct blue lines confirmed my suspicions. Overwhelmed by a flood of emotions, joy, fear, grief, and hope, I collapsed on the bathroom floor, tears mixing with a whirlwind of feelings. Layla, is everything okay in there? My dad's voice pierced the silence. Opening the door, tears streaked down my cheeks. His face shifted from concern to alarm as he saw my state. What's wrong, sweetie? He asked. Holding up the pregnancy test, my voice trembled. I'm pregnant, Dad. As I broke down, he wrapped his arms around me, comforting me with the same tenderness he showed when I was younger. It's okay, he soothed. You're not alone in this. This baby is a blessing, a part of Aiden that will live on. His words resonated deeply. This child was not only a continuation of my love with Aiden, but also a symbol of new beginnings. The fear I felt began to dissolve, replaced by a renewed strength and determination. You're right, I affirmed, wiping away my tears. This baby is a blessing, and we'll be fine. Dad smiled warmly, his eyes crinkling with affection. That's my girl. Now let's get something to eat. You're eating for 2 now, after all. As we headed to the kitchen, hope sprang anew within me. Despite the challenging path ahead, With my father's unwavering support and the life growing inside me, I felt fortified to face the future. Dad became my pillar, constantly encouraging and assisting as we prepared for the baby's arrival, nurturing a newfound routine and joy between us. One sunny afternoon, while I tended the garden we had cultivated together, a familiar car pulled up, dampening the peaceful moment. It was Natalie's sedan. My heart sank as Natalie and Ruby approached the front porch, their expressions a mix of discomfort and desperation. "Layla, we need to talk," Natalie began, her usual sharp tone softened by circumstance. Ruby looked around nervously, adding, "We've hit some tough times. Could we possibly stay in your father's old apartment just until we find our footing?" After all the strife they had caused, their audacity stunned me. Calmly, I responded, "I'm sorry, but that's not possible. I don't wish to maintain contact anymore." Natalie's gaze dropped to my belly, her face twisting into a sneer. "You're pregnant? Already? You little." Her words dripped with venom. But I remained composed, refusing to let her words sway me. I didn't justify or explain that the baby was Aiden's. Such toxic people had no place in my child's life. With a serene smile that seemed to unsettle Natalie further, I declared, "My personal life is none of your business." Sensing she was defeated, Natalie spun around, pulling Ruby along as they retreated. Watching them drive away, a profound peace enveloped me. I had defended my family, upheld my dignity, and I knew Aiden would have been proud.